China is slowing down faster than expected.
2024, China's consumer inflation rate fell below zero for multiple months.
China's economy is on the brink of collapse.
By the end of World War II, China was one of the poorest countries in the world. Cities were destroyed, industries were weak, and millions of people were displaced. And before the country could recover, another war began inside China itself, a civil war. In 1949, after years of fighting, Mao Zedong established the People's Republic of China under a communist system. Communism promised something very powerful. The government would control land, it would control industry, and the wealth would be shared more equally. So for a country that's devastated by war and poverty, this sounded like a dream. And despite all of this, China was still poor. Then in 1978, Deng Xiaoping changed China's strategy. He opened the economy, cities expanded rapidly, and hundreds and millions of people moved into urban areas. And suddenly, China needed something at an enormous scale: housing.
China's housing market continued its downward trend in December. New home prices across 70 cities fell 0.4% month on month.
And one of the sectors that is suffering the most is the property sector. Reports say China's home prices sank for a 13th straight month in September as potential buyers hold a wait-and-see attitude.
The latest government report showed an average price of new homes across 70 cities dropped 0.9% in July on month.
For nearly 20 years, China followed one simple formula: build cities, build apartments, sell them fast, and grow your GDP. And this strategy worked so well for China that real estate and construction together made up nearly 1/4 of China's entire economy. But there is a tiny twist. You see, developers weren't building homes using their own money. They borrowed heavily from banks, then sold apartments before construction was even finished. They used that money to start even bigger projects, and people kept buying because they believed in one thing: that housing prices in China would never fall. And boy, were they wrong. At one point, nearly 70% of Chinese household wealth was stored in property. I mean, that's sick. So developers kept borrowing and China kept building until the country built more than it actually needed. Some estimates suggest that China built enough empty homes for 90 million people. To give you an idea of what that is, that's roughly the population of Germany. By 2020, China's leadership realized something interesting: that developers were carrying dangerous levels of debt. So they introduced a policy called the Three Red Lines policy. These policies acted as rules that developers could not break. So the first line was developers could no longer rely mostly on borrowed money. The second line was they couldn't owe more than their own equity. And the third was that they needed enough cash to survive short-term repayments. Companies that crossed these limits lost access to easy borrowing, and many of China's largest developers crossed all the three. The biggest example was China's Evergrande Group. At its peak, Evergrande was building projects across more than 280 cities in China, but its entire business depended on constant borrowing. So by the time lending restrictions actually arrived, Evergrande had accumulated more than $300 billion in debt. I mean, that's crazy. That's roughly the size of Portugal's entire economy. Then millions of buyers realized something very important: that the homes that they had purchased might never be completed. Imagine paying monthly installment for an apartment that does not even exist. Housing sales across China eventually dropped 50%, and in order to understand this, let's have a look at this small cycle. When housing sales fall, land sales fall, and when land sales go down, local government revenue collapses along with the infrastructure spending that goes down. And when infrastructure spending goes down, the entire economy begins to lose its momentum. As China's property market slumped, home values started falling. And in China, like I said, this matters deeply. Because for most households, property is the main source of wealth. So when prices fall, people just don't lose value on paper. They start feeling poorer in real life. And when people feel poorer, guess what? They stop spending. This cautious behavior spreads across the economy. Families delay purchases, businesses see lower sales, investors reduce risk, and then something more dangerous begins: deflation expectations.
Now, while the UK is struggling to get inflation under control, China's economy is suffering from the opposite, deflation.
This is a chart showing the change in consumer prices in China. As you can see, those prices have been falling a lot.
China's economy, once a global engine of growth, is now struggling with its slowest consumer spending momentum.
When people believe that prices will fall further, they wait instead of buying. I mean, why buy today if it is going to be cheaper tomorrow, right? But this creates a loop. Lower demand leads to lower prices. Lower prices reduce corporate profits. Lower profits means lower wages, and lower wages again reduce the demand. So this is how you see economy slowly starts to freeze. To fight this slowdown, Chinese companies began competing even harder. But instead of healthy competition, it turned into an extreme price war. And this is what China now calls an involution. Involution is a situation where companies compete so aggressively that everyone's profits collapse. It has spread across industries: electric vehicles, food delivery, manufacturing unit, I mean you name it. Companies cut prices just to survive. But that only makes deflation worse. Let me give you an example. Let's say Mr. X buys an EV today in China for a certain price. In just 2 to 3 months, the same EV is going to be cheaper. Why? Because companies are constantly undercutting each other in a race to survive. So what do you think Mr. X is going to do? Obviously not buy the vehicle, right? So consumers delay purchases, waiting for even lower prices, and this is why deflation is so dangerous, because once it starts, it feeds on itself. China is now trying to break this cycle, but it's not going to be easy, because when people expect prices to fall, they stop the economy from moving at all.
China was known for decades for its one-child policy to limit population growth, but now the country is worried about its aging population.
China's population has fallen again, sinking to its lowest level on record.
China is facing a demographic crisis of massive proportions, as fewer babies are born and more people become elderly.
China's population at around 1.4 billion is now shrinking, and mind you, this is not a temporary dip. Births in 2025 fell to just 7.93 million, the lowest level since 1949. A country once defined by population growth is now facing the opposite reality. Fewer babies, fewer workers, fewer consumers, and this didn't happen suddenly. Births have been falling every year since 2016, but the roots go much deeper. For decades, you see China followed the one-child policy, designed to control population growth. And ironically, it seemed to have worked too well. It reduced population growth sharply. A policy meant to prevent overpopulation has now contributed to underpopulation. To understand this more carefully, let's have a look at this graph. The number of people born went from 20 million in 2000 to just 5 million in 2025, whereas the death toll remained the same, leading to a negative natural population growth rate. Because of which, China's working age population, which is about ages 16 to 59, is shrinking fast. It now makes up about 61% of the population, down from over 70% a decade ago. At the same time, the elderly population is rising quickly. Today, roughly 4 working age people support one elderly person, but within 2 decades, that ratio is expected to halve. So this changes everything, because fewer workers means lower production growth, higher labor pressure, and weaker long-time consumption. And remember, China is already dealing with property slowdown, deflation pressure, and manufacturing overcapacity. Now, this particular issue adds another layer on the top. In China, millions of graduates are entering the job market every single year, but something unusual is happening. Unemployment numbers don't look alarming on paper, yet young people are struggling more than ever to find some stable work. But why is that? Because the system you see is split in two. On one side, there are the white-collar jobs that includes offices, startups, and corporate roles, which everybody wants. And on the other hand, you have factories and industrial jobs, which China is excelling at. So it's not just unemployment anymore, it's a structural mismatch. And even those who get good jobs aren't feeling secure. Wages are not growing and uncertainty is rising. So what do you think people do? They obviously save more and spend less, and that slows down the economy even further. But the real shift is still coming. Automation, AI, robotics. They are quietly changing what employment even means. More contract work, more gig roles, and less stability. So the real question is not how many jobs exist, it's actually what kind of jobs will even remain stable in the future of China. And this is just one piece of a much bigger picture of China's unfolding economic crisis. So what do you think is the biggest trigger behind it all? Is it jobs? Is it debt? Or is it real estate? Drop your answer in the comment section. This is Apurva signing off, and thank you so much for watching.